On Friday, Wisconsin Governor Tony Evers vetoed a bill proposing to ban the teaching of critical race theory concepts in schools. The Assembly Bill 411 would have forced the schools to change how educators discuss race discrimination, among other injustices, in the classroom. Governor Evers said the proposal that passed the state Senate 20-13 was a form of censorship, restricting schools from teaching, quote, honest, complete facts about important historical topics and the Civil War and civil rights. Joining me now to discuss his take on critical race theory is William Reusch. He is a high school social studies teacher. He's also the host of the Cylinder Radio podcast. Thank you for joining me on Black News tonight. I'll begin with a two-pronged question. You're a teacher. First of all, is critical race theory being taught in your school right now? And what's your take on CRT?
Mark, thank you for having me on here. I really love what you're doing with this platform. It's really important. My school now, I'm at a religious private school now. I taught public school, I taught charter school. I ended up going to a religious private school where it is not, but I am a member of the Heterodox Academy K-12 education community. So I am connected with a lot of different schools and teachers from across the country. My take on critical race theory in general or within educational context?
Within the educational context, sure.
I think that it's kind of being used as a catch-all. I think that I've studied this because I think it's very interesting. I think it does have use. I think that critical race theory does have a use. I think that the problem is really that it's become this political football that people are tossing back around. It's becoming anti-CRT or pro-CRT, and it's becoming a lot more of a political issue than really attacking what we should be focusing on, which is what is good pedagogy. And that's my concern, I suppose, is good pedagogy. And I don't think that a lot of stuff that is getting labeled as CRT is good pedagogy.
Well, okay, so just to be clear for my audience, when we say good pedagogy, when you say pedagogy, you're talking about the practice of teaching. And you're saying teaching CRT is not good teaching, and also that it's a football that's being tossed around. But it seems to me that all the tossing is coming from the right. It's not as if there was a movement on the left, hey, let's teach critical race theory in schools. The movement for critical race theory was a movement that really emerges in law schools, emerges in graduate schools, sometimes of education, but certainly not in K-12 education. There was, however, a movement to teach multiculturalism. We saw that in the 80s and 90s. There was a move to teach more accurate versions of history. And all this stuff, and as a social studies teacher, as you know, there's this idea of teaching from various vantage points key issues in our society. So all that's happening, and it seems to me, and Christopher Rufo, one of the leading opponents of critical race theory, framed this quite accurately. He said, look, here's what we're going to do. We're going to call everything critical race theory, and we're going to kill the brand of critical race theory so badly that whenever people hear the name, they freak out about it because we've associated every negative thing and every crazy story to it. So it seems to me that this is a solution in search of a problem.
Yeah, I guess my question for you, and I'm so excited to actually ask you this, Mark, is I don't care really about the name, because I think we get so caught up in is it critical race theory, is it not? But there's bad practices going on with the idea of oppressor versus oppressed and whiteness and things there's bad stuff going on. You can call it a widget, but there is divisive stuff happening in schools. And that's what I want to talk about, not necessarily the label of CRT, but what do you think about that? Because my concern is that those practices are not being called out enough from the left, from within their side.
Right. So to be clear, my issue isn't the label. Right. To be clear, my issue isn't the label either. My point is that there's such a wide range of stuff that's happening. And then I think all of it has quite strategically been called critical race theory so that we don't get to parse out good, bad, different. We don't get to parse out different approaches. We don't get to parse out theories from methods and such. We just call everything critical race theory and then make that the boogeyman, and then there's no conversation to be had about it at all. But to answer your question, I don't begin from the presumption that teaching won't be divisive. I don't begin from the presumption that quality education, quality curriculum won't ever be divisive, because what can be divisive for some could be healthy for others. For example, if I were somebody who just hated puppies, I'm going to pick something arbitrary. I love puppies, by the way. But if I hated puppies and you love puppies, and you taught a curriculum on puppies, it is quite possible that at some point I would be outraged by this puppy pedagogy, and I'd be like, you know what? I don't want any puppy talk in the classroom because it makes me uncomfortable, and that would be a divisive issue. But that doesn't mean that bringing up puppies in the classroom is in and of itself a problem, because that presumes that my perspective is a humane, reasonable, and principled one. And so sometimes this idea that we can't do it because it's divisive, or we can't do it because it makes white people feel this way, or other people feel that way, to me, I don't begin from that place. The devil's in the details.
Yeah, so I think that to respond to kind of this line of thinking is, there isn't a lot of viewpoint diversity among educators. There just isn't. It's when you look at the College of Education, when you look at who are teachers and stuff like that, kind of our psychologically like personalities and stuff like that. I think that when in the spring of 2020, when the George Floyd protests were going on and everything like that, a lot of educators were saying, elevate Black voices, elevate Black voices. And I was like, cool. But every single voice they were elevating was a progressive left voice. And I think there's a lot of teachers that don't even know that Black conservatives are like a thing, or they know Candace Owens or something like that. And that is my concern, is that if it's like puppies are bad, puppies are good, I want to hear puppies are bad, puppies are good. But what I feel like we're only getting is puppies are bad or good.
And my point is, some things aren't debatable, right? I mean, everything is debatable. Let me take that back. Everything is debatable, but I think we all can draw moral lines, right? I don't want to have a debate about whether slavery was good or bad. I don't want there to be a debate about whether the Holocaust was good or bad. I'm not saying you're saying that, but I'm saying that there are some that we all make decisions about whether we all make decisions about where we're going to draw our ethical and moral lines. And so for me, any conversation I have about the Holocaust is going to be that it was an awful human atrocity committed by evil people. Any conversation I have about slavery is going to be the same thing. And so if I begin from that place, then some debate isn't going to be heard. Some dissenting voices are going to feel silenced or marginalized, because I want a curriculum that's humane. And if we make everything up for grabs, then suddenly we don't really have an ethical or moral center. And I think that's part of the problem, is that we try to pretend that this is neutral. I don't pretend school is neutral. I don't pretend the curriculum is neutral. It is a political and ethical and moral space. It's a battleground, and we have to fight for something. Anyway, let me take a break. I want to come back so we can keep this conversation going. I'm enjoying talking to you, Will. Everybody stay right here. When we come back, I'll continue my discussion with William Reusch. We are talking about the hot button issue of teaching critical race theory in schools. Welcome back to Black News Tonight. We continue our discussion about the teaching of critical race theory in schools. Back with me is William Reusch. He is a high school social studies teacher. He's also the host of the Cylinder Radio podcast. I want to give you an opportunity to respond, because I don't want to do the TV host thing where I go to the break and dunk. That wasn't my intention. So what I was basically saying was that we had to, that some things that won't have dissenting voices, that there won't be two sides of every story. What do you make of that?
Yeah, I hear you. I don't know how many people would say that let's argue whether or not slavery was good or the Holocaust was good, but what were the long-term repercussions of these policies is more open for debate. If you ask Glenn Loury or Thomas Sowell, you'd probably get a different answer than if you ask Ibram Kendi, right? So I think that is where we should have some viewpoint diversity about what were the long-term repercussions. And that kind of fits along the lines of critical race theory and stuff like that, things that might not appear to be racist on their surface, but they are in practice. And I think that's important to get different perspectives on what the repercussions would be.
Right. And again, I don't disagree with you there. Again, but that feels, again, to me like a solution in search of a problem. I don't think that there's a lack, actually, of diversity in conversations at the level that you're talking about. But as a social studies teacher, you know that this isn't the conversation we're having in first or second or third grade. We're having conversations about, the color of our skin. We're having conversations about the basic origins of the nation. We're coming to terms with the fact that there was a slave enterprise in America by the time we're in middle school. But yeah, in high school, I think there can be a diverse range of conversations about impact, about ideology. But I think the basic facts of history, which is not what critical race theory is about, that's a separate issue, but the basic facts of history, the basic key issues that shape how we understand our nation and our identity as citizens and as people, I think those things have some basic nuts and bolts that we've ignored for a very long time. And so now we have an opportunity through these interventions to correct that, to acknowledge slavery, to acknowledge colonization and settler colonialism. We can talk about those things. And again, it doesn't mean that, I agree with you, it doesn't mean we ignore conservative voices or liberal voices, but most of the things that people are pointing to and saying, oh my God, look at that critical race theory going on in schools, they're not pointing to a liberal analysis of slavery 3 decades after the Emancipation Proclamation or a century later. They're talking about the fact that we're calling white people white, or that we're talking about white privilege, or that we're pointing to the fact that slavery had an impact that white people still benefit from 100 years later. That's the stuff they're pointing to and saying that we shouldn't do that.
Yeah, I think, when it comes to little kids, the approach of dividing them, saying that this group is, belongs to, is this category and this group is that category. I think there's a real push to have kids see themselves within group identity and away from seeing themselves as individuals. That's something that's happening. Is these are like these trends that are kind of happening in schools right now, and it should at least be discussed whether or not that's appropriate.
Well, let me ask you a question. So if we should just look at each other as groups, as individuals rather than groups, right? Would you say that, you have a flag behind you. Would you be okay telling the kids they're not Americans?
Yeah, I'm not saying that only as individuals, but as an individual, as like your primary characteristic. Like, before I am an American, I am other things that make me me. So I think it's fine to
Like
recognize
what?
group identity, but just not make the primary.
Yeah, like what kind of stuff?
Like the way I view myself would be as an educator, as a father, martial artist, free thinker, critical thinker, things like that.
Right. And for much of the world, particularly people who have been racialized as black is part of that. Except the problem is that school historically hasn't pointed that out. So again, this is not, in a vacuum. And so if, you grow up knowing you're black and being identified in the world as black and racialized as black, even as a very small child, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and school doesn't talk about race, but all the textbooks are white, and the reading primers are white, and the teachers are white. 70% of the nation's teaching, 90% of the nation's teaching force is white, and the newscasters are white, and the presidents are white, and you know what I mean? And everybody you see is white, then you would grow to think negatively of yourself, not because of race talk, but because of the absence of any kind of race talk that normalizes the idea that having a race is okay, and having black as your racial identity is not only okay, but a good thing.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. And representation matters. I think that because it's been absent for so long, there's such a push now to ignore the other things as opposed to assimilate the both, or integrate the both, I should say. I think that's what we need more of than just only focusing on race now as like the primary thing, race or gender, whatever those markers are.
So what would be an example of race talk in the minute we have left? What would be an example of some kind of race talk that's missing from the conversation, Will? What's something that we're not talking about that's now, because of this corrective shift you're talking about, what's now not being pointed out?
I think that diversity within the Black community is missing in a lot of American classrooms. I think a lot of teachers, as you said, most are white, most are politically left. Teacher unions and stuff like that are Democrat. And I am shocked at how many teachers I talk to can't name a single Black conservative. Or even conservative arguments against things like affirmative action and stuff like that. I'm not against affirmative action, but I understand that there are arguments for and against it, and I'm kind of wrestling with it. And I think that's the really good work that we should be doing in schools, is not say this is the only way. Kendi and D'Angelo are the only way. It's them and all of these other ideas, and we can kind of mix them together.
Here's my issue with that. Kendi and Robin DiAngelo and stuff like that. First of all, we're pretending that they're like at the center of American curriculum, and they're just not. There's no formal curriculum that I know of that has them at the center. I'm not saying they never get brought up. I'm not saying their ideas never get raised. But in general, that's sort of not really happening. And I don't know of any K-12 curriculum that is specifically pointing to affirmative action and saying, affirmative action is a great thing and we got to keep doing it, right? That's not really a major part of K-12 curriculum, even in social studies, which is your area. So to me, again, these are solutions in search of problems, if not full out straw men. But I asked you a question. I want to give you one more chance to answer before we go. I was talking specifically about sort of in the context of racial identity, because I get these policy issues that you're talking about, but I mean, is there a way that we're talking about race, particularly in the early grades, since that's the example we were just on? Is there a way that we're talking about race that's missing? I mean, when we have books like Skin Like Me, or when we're teaching about, about racial differences, or that race is a social construct. Is there something about whiteness or something about blackness or something about race more broadly? It could be anything. I don't want to put words in your mouth. What's missing? And I'll give you the last word.
Well, yeah, I mean, as far as like Ibram Kendi and stuff like that, that is, I mean, it's happening on the PD level. I don't think there's a curriculum based around him, but there is a lot of his kind of work and stuff.
You said
like
the PD level?
Yeah, professional development. I'm sorry.
So I'm only interrupting for. Yeah. Oh. Cool. I'm giving you the last word. I just wanted for my audience to understand. When you're saying, because they may not know this language, PD is professional development. So you're saying it's not being taught in the classroom. You're saying people are coming to teach teachers this stuff after school or on an off day.
Yes. Yeah. And they're not getting the criticisms of that. Yeah. But I think what is missing is more of these people who look differently than me. We have a lot, I guess, to put it succinctly, we have a lot more in common than we have that differs us. And I think that is what is lacking, and I would like to see more of that.
Fair enough. Will, thank you so much for joining me on the show and expressing your thoughts. I really appreciate it. Glad to have you. Hope to have you back again soon.